Hey, this is Wookie from Mandala Studios, welcome to the workshop, and today we're going to do the process of how we made a clown headpiece for an It costume. So to start with, we had to sculpt the skull cap. So we built up a block of clay evenly over the surface, building up into the top where it needed to be. Just so you know, this is for a child's costume, so the head we're using is really small, and they wanted some weird things later. So yeah, we just start building up the bulk of the the clay, just starting to get the vague forms in place. Keep referencing the picture on the screen behind the camera. Once we've got the bulky clay in place, we go over it with a steel kidney tool. We're going to start evenly shaping it, trying to get the roundness we want over the whole surface. And we keep going at this for a while. Constantly checking the references, making sure that it's looking that correct bulbousness for the reference. It's a copy of Tim Curry's It, rather than the modern one. Then we move on to a silicone scraper. Just smoothing out that whole surface. There you go, good profile view showing you the form. Then we soften it off with some talc. There's not much going on here. Not a very exciting sculpt, I'm afraid to say. Yeah, the eyebrows and stuff are all from the performer. So we're just smoothing out. There's very little texture in the whole piece because it's designed to look like a latex piece. We added a bit of texture over it just to give some interest, but there's not a lot there to it. And we soften off that texture that we put on with a stipple sponge with a normal sponge. And that's kind of where we're going. Now on to moulding, hopefully a bit more interesting. So to start with, we cut some clay walls, and then we should lay them around the head below the level of the sculpture. And keep doing that. We put in some blocks of clay underneath to support the wall. We're aiming to do this as a one-part mould, hopefully just lifting it straight off. Because this is only a skull cap that didn't need to go below the crown of the head, because that would have the wig securing the bottom of the skull cap onto the head. We didn't need to worry about it, so we thought a one-piece mould would make cleaning up easier. So you see we're just working into the corner there, trying to get a nice sharp edge and get a nice round surface. And we clean up that corner with a brush and make sure the whole thing's smooth. Not my cleanest mould wall ever, but it'll do the job. It did do the job. Then we mix up some plaster into some warm water. You want to add enough plaster to the bowl that it completely saturates the whole thing, and then leave it to slake. And once the whole thing has slaked through, you can see it starting to form that dry lake bed look that everyone talks about. There we go, and once that's, you start to mix it with a squeeze the plaster between your fingers motion, then apply it to the sculpture. We really tried moving the camera around here and it's very disorientating. I don't like it. We should probably get a decent cameraman. There you go, that's one layer of plaster over the whole thing. Just brush it around nice and even. And we break out the plaster from a previous bowl, add some water to that to clean it out. And then mix up another bowl. Again, layers of plaster evenly sprinkled over the whole surface so that it forms islands on the surface all over. This is when you know that it's not absorbed anymore into the water, it's completely saturated. Then we leave it to slake while we cut up some scrim. Leave the whole thing to slake, so that reduces the amount of blocks of plaster that need breaking up in the mould. Not the mould, the plaster liquid. Then we saturate the scrim and lay it over the surface, trying to get it nice and homogenised in so there's no air pockets left underneath anywhere. And we take any spare plaster we've got and we put it over the whole surface, and then just neaten up with a random sponge, clean up around the edge with the sculpting mould making tool just so it's not easier to work with later, mark in what it is and just smooth it down. Then we move on to demolding the whole piece. Now this really stuck. I was very worried that this would actually have been placed the mould wall a little too low and it got stuck on the crown of the head, and we just couldn't, as you can see, get it off at all. So here's me hitting it with it is a foam wrench. So what we had to do at the end was we put pressure washer and fired water up underneath into the gap until eventually the whole thing would just dissolve the clay out from underneath and it would pop out. Then we peel out that big block of clay and then give the mould a wash. And I get wet trousers. Then we move on to casting. So what we do is we mix up some latex and we add some white acrylic paint, give it a stir. This is just to give us a tint of the latex underneath. We will paint it again over the top. It takes out the orangeness from the latex when it cures. So we swill that around the whole surface, making sure we've got white over everywhere. Then once that has got a good coverage, we backfill it with latex. So that we can get the whole casting. Then it comes to painting. You can see it's a pale colour. We get some white paint, add some Prosaid to it. Get a brush and we just slap it over the whole thing. Lift it up on a block of sponge because it was annoyingly falling down onto the ears. And yeah, nothing to this, just paint it on, then stipple it with a sponge to kill the texture. Now we're marking out the exact cuts. We want to put in the eyebrow cuts just to make it a little more characterful around the front. And you missed there that we split the back, and we split the back by putting a hole up at the top, then cutting up into the hole. And then we're riveting in some little Velcro straps into that slit so that the child who's wearing it can adjust it to fit. Now, interestingly, what they wanted here was they wanted the hair to be removable. So this was a last minute addition. So what we ended up having to do was we took some neodymium magnets and we glued those behind some felt with a touch of super glue, and we super glued the magnet into the felt. There's us cutting the back split. And then we super glue those magnets in along the hairline, which you saw me earlier marking with some chalk. You see, we're just terminating the split for the back of the head with a hole so that it can't stretch out and ladder. Now we put the other magnets on the other side, and we're going to glue the wig piece that we cut from a It costume wig to those magnets. So what we've done is we've cut the vinyl off the original hairpiece, and we're going to use the strip of vinyl that's remaining as the fixing to allow us to give us something to attach it to the magnet with. And we just add a touch of super glue and glue it round. We keep working round like that, and you'll see the first piece of hair doesn't quite cover the length. So what we do is we get a second wig and do the same cutting again, and then mark out the length we need and cut it to length. Then we glue that to the magnet and to the other piece of hair and to the next magnet, so the whole thing joins up, glued in place together. What we did is we glued each strip to half of the strip to the magnet and then to each other half, and then I think we put some backer behind it as well to keep the whole joint secure both sides. The joy of doing it like this is it allowed us to adjust the length of the hair bits we were using. You can see there I'm using some magnets, some super glue and some zip kick to fix the two together. You don't see me going around, I put a backer piece behind all that to join it together. You see me putting together the hair. Thanks very much for watching. That wasn't a very good video, but there you go.